Comóradh Luíochán. Welcome everybody here today. Tá bradúil agus tá anóir ar seasamh ar an áid starúil seo chun comóradh a dhéanamh ar bhua milíta na hÉireann ógla na hÉireann thar na brachanna ná Clann Chill Mhichil. I'm very proud and honoured to stand on this historic spot, this place, to commemorate the victory of the Irish forces of the Irish Army, Óglaigh na hÉireann, over the British forces at the famous Battle of Kilmichael. This is a historic place of enormous significance, but it is also a holy place. It's historic because the action physically took place here, when our defenders, our volunteers in Óglaigh na hÉireann, under the command of General Tom Barry, engaged with and triumphed over the British forces, the auxiliaries. These auxiliaries were considered Britain's crack troops. They're elite troops that were considered undefeatable. But Tom Barry tells us that they were organised as a terrorist body. They had at their disposal excellent living conditions. This in comparison to the very harsh circumstances that our volunteers lived under and laboured under. It is also a holy place because the evil forces of a colonial regime who had plundered and murdered and pillaged for 700 years up to 1920 were again confronted here by the forces of good, our volunteers of Óglaigh na hÉireann. On that day, the 28th of November 1920, in the course of the battle, 3 volunteers were killed. They were taken from the hearts of their family, from our communities and from our nation. Because of the sacrifices of our volunteers, this place is holy. It is also holy because the spilling of the pure blood of our defenders marks this place as a holy place. Later, Diarmaid will give an oration and go into more detail on the background. We have a prayer now from Mick Bracken. Mick, to commemorate those who fell here on the 28th of November 1920, the sacrifices of all the people who participated in the fight for our sovereign nation. This is a spot, a very famous spot, a very important place, because the sovereignty of our nation was asserted very visibly and vividly. Mick.
Many dear the Fredden, many dear Agus Villa. These shifts the common Marapachina. Hear me forth Marapachina. For all me Galea, their Pasha, eagraithe Galna Crinna. May God bless all the company of the soul here. May God nearly bless you. You too spent a while here, just as we are now, and we too will join you soon. May we all be adorned in the beauty of the bright King of Heaven. Niamhspleách, we all.
At the laying of the wreaths now, Carmel McCarthy is a niece of Michael McCarthy. Eddie Walsh will lay a wreath on behalf of all who fought here and on behalf of all the fallen volunteers in the fight for Irish freedom. We now have a minute's silence. Thank you. And Dainí Maidhcí will sing The Boys of Kilmichael, a famous song honouring all the action that took place here.
Though we honour in song or in story the memory of Pearson McBride, whose names are illumined in glory with martyrs who long since have died. Forget not the boys of Kilmichael, those brave lads so gallant and true, who fought neath the green flag of Erin and conquered the red, white and blue. On the 28th day of November, the Tans left the town of Macroom. They were seated in two crossley tenders, which led them right into their doom. They were on the road to Kilmichael and never expected to fall, when they met with the boys of the column, who made a clean sweep of them all. The sun in the west it was sinking, 'twas the eve of a cold winter's day, when the Tans we were eagerly waiting sailed into the spot where we lay. And over the hills went the echo, the peal of the rifle and gun, and the flames from their lorries gave tidings that the boys of the column had won. So here's to the boys of Kilmichael, those brave men so gallant and true, who fought with the bold Tommy Barry and conquered the red, white and blue. Their lorries were ours before twilight and high over Dunmanway town. Our lorries in triumph were waving to show that the Tans had gone down. We gathered our rifles and bayonets and soon left this glen so obscure, and never grew until we halted in the faraway camp of Glenure. So here's to the boys of Kilmichael, those brave men so gallant and true, who fought neath the green flag of Erin and conquered the red, white and blue.
Great song, great song. And introduce Diarmaid now, and Diarmaid will deliver the oration for today.
On a damp, cold night 100 years ago, the men of the flying column of the 3rd West Cork Brigade marched here to Kilmichael. They were wet, cold and hungry. They came here to attack the elite of the British forces, the well-trained and battle-hardened auxiliaries. This elite officer corps were running around terrorising families, burning homes and killing innocents. For an elite corps, they acted most cowardly. They were bullies and hard men when they faced defenceless people. They were unbeatable, or so they thought, but arrogance is a dangerous thing. They met their death on that cold November evening. The men of the column, though inexperienced, poorly armed, and with minimal training, had a big advantage. They were well organised and they were highly disciplined. They had courage and their hearts were fully committed to the cause. They had leadership which brought out all of these qualities. And importantly, they were of and supported by the people whose cause they championed. One of the great lessons of the flying columns is the importance of training, discipline, organisation and resolute leadership. A relatively small force, if properly organised, can defeat a superior one. This was seen throughout the war and typified at Kilmichael here and at Crossbarry and elsewhere. Discipline, organisation and leadership are vital elements to any revolutionary movement. But what of their hearts? What drove ordinary peace-loving men to violence? What was their politics? They were Republicans. Some say that the men of the Flying Column were not political. I disagree. I think they were very political. They knew in their hearts and souls that they had to fight for the freedom of Ireland, that it was worth more than life itself. You can't get more political than that. The Rising of 1916 had lifted the veil. It awakened among the people what had become the memory of an ancient glory. It cast aside the reformers, those who had become the recruiting sergeants for the British war in Europe, costing tens of thousands of Irish lives. The men of the column were of this tradition. Their people lived through the starvation imposed by England in the genocide of the 1840s. Their people were baptised in the Fenian faith. Men like Tom Barry were not taught proper history in school. Nobody was. But while Irish history was not taught, there was and remains a collective memory in Ireland. Maybe something spiritual existing socially outside of any individual's mind, a cultural awareness of who we are, an awareness of the struggles waged by generations of our people. History was written by the servants of British rule to conquer our minds as well as our bodies. This was exposed in the national revival and in the ideals of the 1916 Rising. People set about reclaiming our nationality, but when they expressed our democratic wish, it was once more suppressed, and revolution was the only path left. Violence was chosen by the British. The people were left with no alternative. Nirvain Dullas, ach an Dullam an Rev Lloyd. Hig O'Gonig an Colún Raha, e Shin, nur Don Theodore na Hugsies, an sa céad bliain ó hin. What were these ideals? The Republican ideal goes back to the United Irishmen, whose political objective was very simply explained by Wolfe Tone: to break the connection with England. Tone's strategy to achieve this was to unite the whole people of Ireland, to abolish the memory of all past dissensions, and to substitute the common name of Irishman in the place of the denominations of Protestant, Catholic and Dissenter. The United Irishmen appealed to every section of society, but in the end, the gentry deserted. Tone explained, if the men of property will not support us, they must fall. We can support ourselves by the aid of that numerous and respectable class of the community, the men of no property. This betrayal by the gentry was seen again in 1801, when they claimed that they were very happy to have a country to sell. Later, James Fintan Lawler explained that it was not worth fighting for the repeal of the Act of Union, but that it was worth everything to fight for the repeal of the conquest itself, to fight for the ownership of Ireland by the people of Ireland. This was the same revolutionary idea of Wolfe Tone, and it was repeated by the Fenians and in the proclamation of the Irish Republic in 1916. The people have always been central to the Irish Republic. Pearse clarified it further on the eve of the 1916 Rising when he said, "Let no man be mistaken as to who will be Lord in Ireland when Ireland is free. The people will be Lord and Master." Wolfe Tone had explained that there were only two alternatives: an enslaved Ireland and a free Ireland. This wasn't written in the history books or taught to the men of the column. But they knew it anyway. It was handed down in our very nationality, in the tradition of the people. This is what the men of the column came here to fight for. Ach foréir, níl an Niamhspleách chuididir céad bliain ó shin bainte amach againn. Cad fé stáid na tíre anew. In Ireland, the men of property still rule, north and south. Sometimes those who rule call themselves Republican, sometimes they call themselves Unionist. But as far as the men of no property are concerned, they are the same. Despite their labels, their true interest is money. And sadly, what might be revolutionary politics is grossly misrepresented today and misguiding us. Some masquerade as Republican while they collaborate with every policy that the ruling elite imposes on us. This is true north and south. Parties and individuals claim to be Republican while they facilitate every exploiter, native and foreign. These Republicans would take the 6 counties out of the UK only to surrender them to the EU, swapping one master for another. Some masquerade as socialists, but they disrupt every effort of the working class to organise. These so-called socialists deny our national rights and preach globalist policies, that there should be open borders around Ireland. But in today's world, open borders only serve imperialism, the bankers, the giant corporations, and those among us who are their paid servants. These so-called socialists and Republicans, so-called, bring shame on a great tradition. They have abandoned any direct appeal to the people to rise up in defence of our own interests. To them, the men of no property have no importance. These traitors have aligned themselves to the gravy train. As the song goes, they've gotten the foreman's job at last. We know these traitors by their meek demands to seek a better deal or fairer conditions or better welfare or more jobs. We see their fake smiles in photographs. We see them playing the political games in Brussels, in Leinster House and in Stormont. They are reformist. They are here to preserve the status quo. They have abandoned the flag of revolution. Revolutionaries do not beg that the people should have a better say or more say in how our country is run. They assert that it is the people only who should have any say whatsoever. It is necessary to reassert this revolutionary idea of both republicanism and socialism, which, in the words of James Connolly, are inseparable. He described that the cause of Labour is the cause of Ireland, the cause of Ireland is the cause of Labour. We must shape these ideas for the Ireland of today, not simply mimic the past. We must inform the public debate and expose the lies of the ruling elite and their enslaving politics. Hat tradiisiún na raibh loide seo fácha linge, is fuin féin rud éigeanta dhéanamh leis. Simply unifying Ireland, if it means the same ruling elite continues, would not be a revolutionary deed. Re-establishing the Irish Republic would be revolutionary, but simply expanding the Free State would not be. To advance the cause of Ireland, to advance the revolution, we must identify opportunities and steps to be taken which will bring us closer to this objective. Tugan an Bratamak, no Brexit, count as the desin is sin doing, agus tá sé mail an phobal fi láthir, agus begar feag tamil. Sular Comóradh isteach san EEC, níos mó na carca bliain ó shin, hí publictánaigh Clann ina dhuine. Republicans have always opposed the European Union. It replaces our sovereign right with a system of rule over us by unaccountable bureaucrats acting for powerful vested interests. We should demand that the southern state leaves the European Union. Such makes economic and political sense on its own, but with Brexit it makes double sense, and has the advantage of being aligned with our northern fellow countrymen who are currently under the sway of UK unionism. In this debate we can expose sham Republicans for their EU unionism and their denial of the most basic Republican principle, that is, the sovereignty of the nation. We should ask whether nations exist anymore. If they do, what are the rights of nations? At the founding of the United Nations Organization, following the end of World War II, the right to national self-determination was identified as a requirement to world peace. Is this true anymore? If we deny the right of nations, then we must deny what the men of the column came here to fight for. These are fundamental questions which need asking. No passing of laws in Brussels, in London, in Washington or in Dublin can change what the historic right of nations are. Such rights are enshrined in the blood of millions worldwide and in the necessity of the peoples to prosper and to exist. Brexit offers an opportunity to explain the necessity for national independence in practical terms. We need to control our international trade, not yield it to London, to Brussels or Washington. Our national economy, in either agriculture or industry, cannot flourish while exposed to market access by giant foreign corporations. Market access rules are manipulated by the EU, by the ECB, by the US, by the IMF. The result is that our domestic manufacturing is virtually wiped out. Our growers can't compete, and we import food and other produce from around the globe that we should be producing ourselves. We need to control our currency and to protect it from speculators. We have been forced to pay the gambling debts of the largest banks in Europe, the US and the UK, and this by those who are supposed to be our friends and partners in Europe. We need to control the movement of capital and labour, including migration, according to laws decided in Ireland by the Irish people. We need to control and harness our natural resources in service to the people, including our gas and oil, and including our vast fishing grounds that are being destroyed. Local economy should serve local communities. These need protection at national level, something ignored by Dublin, let alone Brussels. The men of the column did their deed. The question is, what is our deed to be? I think we must elaborate the principles that underline our Republican politics to unite all the people of Ireland, oblivious of differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided the minority from the majority in the past. There is one nation in Ireland, not two communities, not Protestant, Catholic or dissenter, just Irishmen and Irish women. And this nation has rights. We need to build an organisation that reflects this ideal. We must take up the cause of the men of no property. We must anchor our demands with the working class and with the small farmers of Ireland. It is in our common interest that the Irish people should decide how our country is run, not any vested interests. Building this unity should be the ultimate respect shown to the men of the column whose lives were taken here 100 years ago, and to the thousands of other men and women who stood with them. Genuine republicanism needs to set the agenda and become the revolutionary leadership in Ireland again today. Mulamid go Joe na hogánig a shasan fód an so céad bliain ó hin. Yesterday, agus a measc léach go gael gur an anamach a Irish an public to boot.
Niamh, Uí Bhriain will sing a lovely Irish song now, Sliabh. Thanks, Mary. This is a 98 song written by a Cork man, the same strength and courage as the men of Parliament. We are young versa, all on occasion is the awesome fair in Sliabh card. Marnach will say meg is fair van is forth my pleasure. Ach gallis eg bega is sacred above us. Arrogant fleisha near the shame. Is Comóradh Luíochán Chill Marathon Melig Ejan of Gendin Saran Makeni Lopik Náisiúnta Niarani Garmeja Edu Samlechoin Snirawamer Feinaun Egoir my gert Ak Mario Fui Freda My Fui Ganera Heiv Nagrena Dainí of Naman. Oh, young men courageous, they were impatient if they had waited just one more day until from Tipperary and the noble Dacia came 10,000 brave men for to join the fray. They were defeated and most cruelly treated, but we'll keep the memory of each gallant man. For we fought the foeman, the cowardly yeoman, on the winds, the wet slopes of old Sliabh Naman. The hauling of Niamh, a nation that produces such beautiful culture, the magnificent games of hurling, and and who has produced some of the greatest people in the entire world, the defenders of our nation, can only be a magnificent nation. They can never be forgotten. They should never be forgotten. In remembering our volunteers today, we should also keep in mind these young men had every entitlement to live in their own country, among their families, within their communities, and build a life. War was brought into their life. The degradation of colonial oppression was brought into their life, was brought into our lives for centuries. We are an independent, sovereign nation. We have every right to assert it. And it has continued up into the current day, into our current and our recent history. Cover-up is something that we should not tolerate. Today I will list the names of the men or the young lads. Some of them are very, very young, and before they joined the IRA they had already been in the volunteers. Reading about their lives, I discovered that they are people of immense stature, pure hearts, honest people, decent people. And they had a great, at that time they had a great association and link to our own culture, which was despite the oppression, was still vibrant. I'll read them now in numerical order. Jack Ahern, 19, Tom Barry, 22, Sonny Casey, 18, Neelis Cotter, 29, Batty Crawlin, 25, Dennis Cronin, 23, Sonny Dave Crowley, 26, Timothy Crowley, 31, Pat Deasy, 16. He died as a result of being shot on the day of Kilmichael ambush. Sean Falvey, 22, John Hegarty, 25, John Hennessy, 21, Michael Hurley, 23, Dan Hurahan, 20, Jack Hurahan, 21, John Kelly, 30, John Lorden, 28, Jack McCarthy, 28, Michael McCarthy, 25. He was also killed here. He's in East Lady Reed today. Paddy McCarthy, 20, Timothy Casey McCarthy, 35, Jim Spud Murphy, 20, John Fire Nyan, 28, Dennis O'Brien, 21, Paddy O'Brien, 24, Jim O'Connell, 22, John O'Donovan, 23, Michael O'Donovan, 21. Another Michael O'Donovan he was 24. Patrick O'Donovan, 21. Patrick O'Donovan, 22. John O'Driscoll, 22. Michael O'Driscoll, 21. Michael Clann O'Driscoll, 22. Jeremiah O'Hay, 28. James Mahoney, 29. Jeremiah O'Mahony, 29. Dennis O'Neill, 23. Stephen O'Neill, 31. Dennis O'Sullivan, 26. Jack O'Sullivan, 21. Jim O'Sullivan, 26. John D. O'Sullivan, 22. Tim O'Sullivan, 40. And Jack Roach, 18. And lastly, Ned Young, 28, who I met here. We'll now have some music by the girls of the Comóradh Luíochán Chill Mhichil.